You good? No. It's okay. I didn't quite catch the end of that.
Don't rock the jukebox. I wanna hear some Jones.
He looked like just another small-town kid chasing a dream on the American Idol stage, but what the cameras didn't show was the kind of heartbreak most people don't survive, let alone sing through. John Foster wasn't just performing for a golden ticket or national exposure, he was singing for something far deeper, something the producers didn't script and the judges could only feel. Before the lights, before the applause, before he even touched a microphone, John carried a secret so heavy it nearly crushed him. What millions saw as a breakout artist was in truth a broken young man trying to rebuild himself, one lyric at a time. While other contestants came with stage experience and media training, John came with a soul shaped by loss and a heart that still hadn't healed. But that pain, that raw, unfiltered pain, became the very thing that made his voice unforgettable. What started as a song became a message, and what began as a performance turned into a movement. By the end of his audition, America saw more than a singer. They saw a story. And once you know the truth behind John Foster's rise, you'll never hear his voice the same way again. It all began on what should have been a night of celebration, a cold New Year's Eve in a quiet Louisiana town where fireworks were meant to light up the sky, not tragedy. At just 16 years old, John Foster received a phone call that would shatter everything he knew. His two closest friends, Maggie Dunn and Caroline Gill, had been killed in a horrific crash. But this wasn't some random accident. It was the result of a police officer speeding through a red light in the midst of a high-speed chase, slamming into the girl's car and leaving their community paralyzed with grief. Maggie's brother barely survived, clinging to life while John sat alone by the bayou, trying to comprehend the incomprehensible. There were no words for what he felt, so he did the only thing he knew. He picked up his guitar and began to strum through the pain. From that darkness, he wrote "Tell That Angel I Love Her," a song soaked in sorrow and honesty, a melody born not out of ambition but desperation. That night, music didn't save John's life. It became the only thing keeping it stitched together. In the stillness of grief, while others cried or screamed, John sang. And that decision, to turn heartbreak into harmony, set him on a path that would eventually take him from the shadows of loss to the spotlight of a national stage. But nothing about it was glamorous. Nothing about it was easy. This wasn't a story of dreams coming true. It was a story of a boy forced to grow up overnight, of a soul learning how to sing not just in spite of pain, but because of it. Long before national headlines and thunderous applause, John Foster was just a quiet boy growing up in Addis, Louisiana, a town so small it barely makes the map, where traditions run deep, neighbors know everything, and anyone who doesn't fit in learns to keep their head down. In a place where most boys pass time with footballs and fishing poles, John clung to old cassette tapes of George Strait and Keith Whitley like they were lifelines. While his classmates laughed in crowded cafeterias, John spent his afternoons lost in the voices of country legends, humming tunes and writing lyrics that no one ever heard. He was different, and in a town that didn't quite know what to do with different, that made him lonely. But what no one saw was that behind those soft eyes and quiet presence, he was already rehearsing for something bigger, teaching himself how to sing with the soul of someone twice his age, blending sorrow with strength, grief with grit. For John, music wasn't a hobby or a phase, it was refuge. It was the only way to feel less invisible in a world that often made him feel like a stranger. And while his peers chased popularity or college football dreams, John chased something else entirely: connection, a way to be heard, a way to matter. Those early years of isolation were not wasted. They were the soil where his deepest roots were planted, roots that would later allow him to stand tall on a stage far beyond Addis, carrying with him not just a voice, but a story carved out of silence, sadness, and relentless perseverance. While most teenagers were still figuring out who they wanted to be, John Foster had already started becoming someone unforgettable. In 2024, he graduated as valedictorian of Bruce Lee High School, topping his class not just with grades, but with a fire inside him that set him apart. Balancing late-night study sessions with songwriting, he wasn't just excelling, he was healing through harmony. The same boy who once cried over a guitar by the bayou was now being booked for gigs before he'd even finished unpacking his dorm room at LSU. His original original songs started spreading like wildfire, whispered from local stages to online playlists, earning him not only fans but recognition across the ocean. In 2022, his heart-wrenching ballad Someone to Sing To, inspired by his grief, won him the Traditional Songwriter Award at Treff International in Germany. From a Louisiana bedroom to a European spotlight, John didn't just step into the music scene, he broke through it. While his peers debated majors, John was navigating rising fame and the emotional weight of telling stories too heavy for most adults to carry. This wasn't a career launch, it was a resurrection. Each lyric became a lifeline, thrown out to anyone who had ever felt lost, and people were grabbing hold. His voice wasn't polished by producers, it was forged by loss, and that made it impossible to ignore. The rise wasn't just fast, it was fueled by something real, and the world was just starting to pay attention. At the heart of John Foster's music wasn't just talent, it was faith. A devout Catholic, John wasn't chasing celebrity, he was chasing healing for himself and for others. Long before idol cameras rolled, his most meaningful performances took place in a modest church called St. John the Baptist, where he sang not for money or applause, but for connection. There his voice became more than a sound, it became a mirror reflecting the grief and hope of everyone who heard it. Churchgoers didn't just listen, they felt, they cried, they prayed, and through it all, John's music became a bridge between earthly pain and something higher. His songs weren't written for hits, they were written for hearts. Every lyric came from the marrow of his own loss, and in sharing it, he gave others permission to confront theirs. That sacred connection gave John his true power, not a stage presence, but a soul presence. He wasn't performing, he was ministering. And when American Idol came calling, it wasn't just an opportunity, it was destiny. The boy who once stood alone by the bayou now had a community behind him, not because he was famous, but because he made them feel seen. That church was his training ground. And when he stood on the national stage, he carried more than a song, he carried an entire town's spirit, pain and hope in his voice. When John Foster stepped onto the American Idol stage, he didn't just bring his voice, he brought his entire world. Most contestants come with cover songs and rehearsed smiles. John came with Cajun food for the judges and a guitar carrying the weight of everything he'd lost. Then came the moment no one could have prepared for. He sang Tell That Angel I Love Her, the same song born from tears the night Maggie and Caroline died. But this time, it wasn't just a memory. Maggie's mother sat in the audience. As John sang, the air thickened, the judges froze, the audience wept. There was no performance, there was only presence. Every note carried grief, but also grace. It was a moment of complete emotional surrender that cracked open the hearts of everyone watching. This wasn't just a tribute, it was catharsis. It was John giving the world permission to feel again. For a brief sacred moment, the bright lights faded, and what remained was raw, pure truth, the kind that doesn't need words, just melody. That performance didn't just advance him in the competition, it transformed him in the eyes of America. He wasn't just a contestant, he became a voice for the voiceless, a reminder that pain doesn't have to be hidden, it can be sung. With fame comes fire, and John Foster felt the heat fast. As his name rose in Idol rankings, so did online rumors and bizarre conspiracy theories. Some accused him of lying about his age, claiming he was 24 instead of 18. Others doubted his hometown, swearing he was a plant from Nashville or secretly related to Dwight Yoakam. The noise got loud fast, but John didn't flinch. He didn't rage tweet, hire a publicist, or clap back with drama. Instead, he opened Facebook and wrote plainly, I am 18 years old. I am from Addis, Louisiana. I've never been signed to a label. Just like that, with a few quiet lines, he drowned out 1,000 loud lies. That's the thing about dignity. It doesn't yell, it just stands still and speaks truth. And the more people tried to tear him down, the more his real fans rallied. In an age of scandals and fake personas, John stayed grounded, and that authenticity became his armor. It wasn't just his voice that people trusted, it was his character. And when the world saw how he handled chaos with calm, his quiet strength became louder than any rumor ever could. Behind every powerful voice is a chorus, and John's came from the porches, churches, and hearts of Addis, Louisiana. As he rose on Idol, his town rose with him, literally. Banners reading, "We are Addis, proud of you," hung from front yards to town hall. Windows were painted, gardens were lit, and strangers became family in their mission to lift one of their own. This wasn't just fanfare, it was protection, it was love. The same boy who once played guitar in a pew was now carrying their collective grief and pride onto a national stage, and they weren't going to let him walk it alone. When Idol demanded time, travel, and sacrifice, John's parents didn't hesitate. They told him, Go chase your dream, even if it meant pressing pause on college normalcy and comfort, because they knew that voice wasn't meant to echo in a dorm room. It was meant to echo in the world. And without that kind of community, one built on shared pain, fierce loyalty, and quiet faith, John's music might have remained a secret, but instead, it became a shared anthem. Every cheer from Addis wasn't just applause, it was a thank you for surviving, for staying humble, for giving them all something to believe in again. Week after week, round after round, John Foster didn't just perform, he peeled back pieces of himself. While others chased viral moments and flashy covers, John chased authenticity. Each song wasn't just music, it was memory. It was risk. Whether he was tipping his hat to legends like Carrie Underwood or daring to perform an original ballad, John never took the easy route. Vulnerability became his signature. He stood on that stage like an open wound, gritty, trembling, but never fake. He let the nation see the rawness behind the rhythm, the boy behind the bravado, and that courage made him magnetic. It wasn't about vocal range or fancy runs, it was about truth. Every time he sang, he pulled the audience closer into his world. And the further he advanced in the competition, the more America realized they weren't just watching a singer rise, they were watching a soul evolve in real time. Each lyric stripped away a layer of pain, a mask, a memory, until all that remained was the most powerful thing of all, a young man standing tall in his truth. Now among the top 10 finalists, John Foster is no longer just a small-town boy with a guitar. He's become a symbol, not just of talent, but of tenacity, of how brokenness doesn't mean silence, of how music can be more than entertainment, it can be survival. If you ask him, it was never about the trophy. It was about telling stories that mattered, stories that healed. His dream isn't just stadiums and charts, it's to be a light for someone sitting in the dark, the same way he once sat by that bayou, aching and alone. He wants his songs to find the broken, to speak to the unseen, to be the hand that pulls someone back from the edge. And that's why his story isn't ending, it's only beginning, because the world hasn't heard the last of John Foster. They've only heard the first verse, and the chorus that's coming next. It just might change everything.